bit, I suggest you get the Fishing Scout app. It's a very helpful app, fishing app. I think there's about 2,000 people on there, and good amount of information is shared every day. I learn a lot of information in that app every day myself, and I owe a lot of my bass fishing techniques, and actually I owe my fish finder rig to Fishing Scout as well. I learned that from a few saltwater fishermen on there. And this is the fish finder rig. That's the one I just caught the carp on. That carp was little, and you notice how he pulled almost immediately. He didn't hesitate very much. The bigger ones are going to tend to nibble, and they're going to be hard to hit, hard to get. And like I said, you want to leave it about semi-slack, so there's a little bit of loop in your line, but it won't take much for the carp to tighten it up. It gives the carp a chance to play with it a little bit, and then finally grab it and go. This is actually my first video I'll make, but there'll be more to come. I'll have to make a video on some bass fishing in the drainage pond. A lot of people struggle with stained water bass fishing, and that's the only type of bass fishing I do, so. But it varies from day to day. It seems like there's only one hot lure, and I just gotta find it. While I'm waiting for the next bite, I'll kind of give you guys a little topography of my pond. As far as I can stick out my arm from the shore, it's about a foot, maybe 2 feet deep. So it's very shallow right there in the water, and that's typically where I catch most of my bass. I've caught a few out in the 3 or 4 foot range. All the way out in the middle gets to be about 6 or 7 feet deep. Still not a super deep pond at all. It's pretty shallow. Once again, kind of a semi-slack line since I'm not going to be holding it. Give the carp a little bit of a chance to take it first. This one's getting a bite. There's mostly large rocks in here. I catch a lot of my green sunfish in there. They make good bait for a lot of big bass that I catch in front of this pipe. In front of that pipe, the water suddenly drops down to about 3 or 4 feet. Makes a good bass haven. Also, there's some large crappie in here too. I've caught in some huge slab crappie on Senkos before. Got one. This one's bigger. Not that much bigger, but it is. Just got to give him plenty of room to run. Oh, he tied out pretty quick. Nice second little carp. He's got a weird coloration on his lower jaw there. I wonder what that's from. He's all pink on the lower jaw. Never seen that before. This one is probably about 2 inches longer than the first one. This is about the typical size of the ones that I catch. He ran pretty hard. As you can see, he's bleeding a lot. That's not necessarily... That doesn't mean he'll not be okay. They have a lot of blood vessels in their mouths. Kind of like when you bust a lip, you bleed a lot. He'll be fine though. I've caught many carp more than once because they had similar markings. I caught one carp that had a white patch right here of like silver gills, and I caught him twice before. And there was another carp that got stuck in our net once, and it got so bad at the point that he actually tore the net a little bit, and he still had that piece of net on his fin when I caught him a second time. So there he goes. I'm gonna let him back. He'll recover. This guy gives you a good picture of those barbels on his chins. Use those to scrape the bottom looking for food. These are very strong fish. For a little guy, he is definitely strong. In my opinion, they fight harder than catfish. They fight stronger than catfish. They turn and curve around. They fight with the strength of a bass, but not quite the speed. As you can see, I could control him. He was trying to run underneath my rod. If it had been a bigger one of these guys, I might have been in trouble. I might have had to switch rods or something. I'm gonna go ahead and put him back. That's 2 on the fish finder rig today. So far, none on the bottom rig. Try to go for a third. If I catch a third one, I'll probably move out deeper into this part in front of the pipe and see what else I can get. In the pond, if I'm bass fishing, I usually like to catch a small green sunfish in the rocks or so with some worm, or maybe a grasshopper. And then I like to put those on a bigger fish finder rig and cast them out in front of this post. Caught about 3 very large bass or so doing that. A couple other small greedy ones, but lots of big ones. And then I've also caught some very large bass on Senkos before. The bass as my profile pic on YouTube, I caught that guy on a green sunfish, a live green sunfish. If you look at this, I just realized that carp bent the hook. They are very strong fish. I didn't even realize he bent the hook. I didn't think these hooks were bendable. So I'm actually going to use my pliers to bend that back. That carp may not have looked like it, but they're a lot thicker than most fish. And even though he was the size of maybe probably a 1.5 pound bass or so, he's probably a good 2.5, maybe 3 pound carp. You want to try to pick up the rod as delicately as possible if you see a bite, because you don't want to scare them away. But you do want to pick it up because it's very hard to set the hook when the rod's in the stand. I'm actually going to reel this one in and check it. It's been out there for a little while. Not sure if it got touched or not when I had my back turned. And there are a lot of carp in my pond. If you're going to fish a lake that has less carp, I wouldn't check it every once in a while like I'm doing now. If I was fishing deeper, I wouldn't be checking it this often. And now we just wait. So I'm fishing on homeowner's property, so I'm allowed to fish anywhere I have permission to fish on the property. These people right here, very, very nice set of people that let me fish on their property. But fishing on their property, from this line all the way to their fence line over there, I've got some attention, and these people over here have given me permission to fish on their property. So I can actually fish all the way from that fence line now, all the way around to that fence line way over there, in between the white and gray house. Getting a good amount of bites on this one. Just waiting for the chance to set the good hook, get a good hook set. It's kind of hard to stay absolutely still when you're standing. That's why I usually sit down. The ground's pretty wet today, so I don't really feel too comfortable sitting down today, so. Missed him. He was definitely nibbling pretty good. I'm guessing that was probably a bigger size carp. But my impatience got the better of me, and I didn't wait till I got a good chance to get a good hook set. To me, carp fishing is one of the more difficult bait fishing techniques. They're not like catfish. They won't pull and pull and pull until you set the hook, or they hook themselves. Most of the time they'll nibble your bait off carefully, like that one just did. And sometimes if they do run, they only run with a certain amount of heat. That first carp I caught wasn't hooked until I set the hook. It may have looked like it, but he wasn't. I've made many mistakes of thinking the carp was hooked and just started reeling in and had nothing. If your carp suddenly takes off and your bait caster starts spinning, the best thing you can do is wait until you feel like it's spinning as fast as it's going to spin, and then just close the thing. Because then if they're moving fast enough, they'll hook themselves. That's the best way to set the hook. I do the same thing when fishing for bass. And I have probably about a 60% hook chance of hooking a bass when I do that. That's not very high, but it's the best way I know when the bait caster's in the stand like that. For the spinner, I gotta let the line go slack. There's no other way, otherwise I'd scare the fish, and then I gotta set the hook. And that's an even lower hook percentage. So carp are definitely tricky fish to try to catch. Not easy at all. The small ones are a little easier to catch than the big ones though. Casting that one out deep. Maybe I might get a bigger fish. Kind of gonna let the line get a little slack a little bit, a little more slack than usual. Allow the fish to pull a little bit first. As you can see, I got probably about 3 feet of line or so sitting on the surface of the pond. It's sinking down now, but my choice of line is actually 30-pound braid. To me, that's probably the sweet spot for line. It's not too thick, it's not too overkill, but it's a good line. I only ever get snapped if a fish suddenly dives really hard, which has happened a few times before. I've lost one nice carp in here when he suddenly dived down deep in front of that pipe, and I've lost probably about 2 or 3 bass. Maybe 1 catfish, I don't know. Didn't actually see one, so. I actually brought some spare bread in my pocket, but I don't think I need it because I have so much bread still fresh and left from last time. This pond is very slippery right now. It's never actually fell in the pond yet, but definitely slipped many times here. Alright. Now I just gotta wait for a bite. So I've been filming for about 33 minutes now. Definitely like this new GoPro. I'm actually controlling the camera from my phone, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, if you guys just leave me any suggestions for fish for my future videos off the list that I named. Crappie and white perch are a bit tricky to try to target my lake just because I haven't figured out the pattern with them yet, and I don't know if there's a good amount of white perch in here or not yet. I actually stocked this pond with some white perch and some bullhead catfish because I wanted something to help bring down the carp population. A few years ago it was much worse. I would cast into the pond and within probably 2 seconds I'd have a carp almost immediately. So it definitely has gotten better. White perch actually eat carp eggs, and the bullhead catfish compete with the carp for food. So I've definitely seen a spike grow in the bullhead's population. One day I actually came out here. I've only put 2 adult bullheads in here before. I did that last year, and this spring I came out here and casted some worm out underneath that bush right there. And within a few seconds I had like a little, probably 10-inch bullhead. Not little, a big good sized 10-inch bullhead. I couldn't tell if I put him in there or not because he was an adult bullhead, and he could have been one of the originals that I put in there. Within a few seconds later I started catching these little 5- and 6-inch bullheads. I even foul hooked one. They were so thick in there. There's definitely a good amount of bullheads in here now. And then I've caught probably about 2 or 3 white perch since I put the original one in here. I've only put 1 white perch in here, but I'm pretty sure she was a pregnant one. I caught her around spawning season. And she was pretty thick. Good size, probably 8-inch white perch, and she was thick. I put her in here, and since then I've caught 2 smaller white perch and another good sized one. It probably was her. But I could do an eel video if you guys want to show. If you want me to show you how to catch eel, might be a little hard to see because that would be nighttime. It's hard to catch eel during the day. Usually a turtle or a bass gets to the bait first. Lots and lots of American eels. I think most of them live under this pipe and they come out at night. I've probably caught about 8 or so eel. Most of them about 8 or 9 inches long, but I've caught 2 that were around the 2 foot mark. And bass are tricky. Bass are almost as tricky to carp as to catch, but I could definitely do a bass video. I can try for crappie. Usually I catch crappie in here by accident though. Like I caught, let's see, I've caught 2 large crappie with a swim bait. I was just throwing the swim bait to throw it. Wasn't really targeting anything specific. I've caught 3 large crappie, like very large, like 15, 16 inch size crappie on Senkos before. The one in my, the one on my profile art on the YouTube page is actually a black crappie I caught on a Senko. A good 13-inch black crappie I caught on a Senko. Big fat one, I'm pretty sure she was pre-spawn. Looks like the carp is starting to slow down a little bit. The best time to catch them in the summer is early in the morning and then later in the evening. I came here at about probably 7 or so, and I'll check the time as soon as I get this one back out. If your bread is falling off, it either means your ball's not good enough or the bread's not fresh enough, because it shouldn't fall off. I've had bread stay on during the fight before. Like in the video, I'm pretty sure I caught a carp a few minutes ago and the bread was still on. I think the reason behind that is carp are mostly vegetarians, but they will prey on worms and crayfish and dead fish. And I think they mistake the bread for their favorite food, which are the cattail weeds right over here. A couple days every late spring or so, these cattail weeds cover the pond, and their carp are just feeding everywhere. I call that target practice day, because then I take out my any bass lure I plan to use that day, usually like a swim bait or a Senko, and I usually try to see if I can hit the feeding carp. The other day there was one way out there, so I walked along the shore out that way, around into the yard that I was allowed to go into, and I casted. And my plan was to overcast the carp and swim the swim bait right in front of him, kind of like to practice for bass. And who knows, he might have taken it. But I actually ended up hitting the carp. So my aim was right, my distance wasn't. And it was so funny because the carp made a huge loud splash and went underneath the water. It was a good size one too. It was probably about, I don't know, 16, 17 inches maybe. Maybe a little more. That's a good sized carp for this pond. My best guess is someone stalks the carp in these ponds, because I don't know why else there'd be so many little ones. Like I think I said before, I've caught like over 300 carp in here, and only 4 of them were over the 2 foot mark. Only 4. Three of them were caught on bread, and 1 of them was caught on an earthworm by accident. Caught 1 out there on an earthworm. I was actually fishing for catfish. But it was a nice surprise to catch a good, probably 26-inch carp. And they fight hard. There's a difference between a 12-inch carp and a 16-inch carp in the fight. You can feel it. And there was a good difference between that first one that I caught today. It was about 10 inches. Pretty big softy. And then the one I hooked on the bait caster was about, oh no, both of them were on the bait caster. The second one I hooked was about 12 inches or so, and he actually tried to put up a nice fight. So now it's just a waiting game, waiting for the carp to bite. This is usually where I break out my bass lure rod or something like that and just start casting to buy the time. It's funny because I'm the only one that actually fished this drainage pond. I'm the only one crazy enough to actually try to fish it. And I get a lot of questions. A lot of the kids in the neighborhood ask me what I catch. A lot of the grown-ups pull by with their cars by the road and ask me. The homeowner association's always fussing at me. But that's okay. I'm doing something completely legal. I have their permission to fish here, so I'm more than welcome to. I actually have their permission. I technically don't have theirs, but they never said anything to me. I have their permission, their permission, and their permission to fish on their property. And the only time I would ever go off the property is, well, one time I had a carp. Like, I had a bite from a carp. I was using a bobber, which is another way that you can fish for carp. It's just a regular float with one hook below it, about a foot below it or so, in front of this pipe. I had my rod laying down, and the fish went to bite, and I set the hook, but my line was caught around a twig or something, and it snapped instantly. So I saw my bobber float all the way over there.